So it's 2006. We're a year removed from the tragedies of Hurricane Katrina. A new coach and a new quarterback come to New Orleans for a fresh beginning. What do you remember about that?
Yeah, look, it's pretty clear still, and it doesn't seem that long ago. But I'd gotten here, probably January '06, and right away began filling out the staff, looking closely at the current roster, and then evaluating the quarterbacks in that year's draft were, it was Cutler, Young, Leinart, and it was the Reggie Bush draft. We were at the combine, and I can remember it was the day the offensive linemen were working out when we had heard that San Diego had released Drew. We knew he had a significant injury, and we began doing our research at that point, and it came down between two teams, Miami and us, and I think he felt more comfortable or more confident that obviously the commitment we were making both financially and as well, at that time there was so much still going on relative to Katrina that we're trying to put our best foot forward and celebrate any type of signing, any type of, and that's the significance of him signing. Obviously, was forever going to change the organization. And then shortly thereafter, we used the second pick of the draft with Reggie Bush. We had a real good draft that year. It was Bush, it was Roman Harper, Jari Evans, Colston, Streeth. But that was as clear today as looking back on it. And I can recall even when Mickey and I flew up to pick up Drew and his wife, they were in Birmingham rehabbing with Dr. Andrews, and he was still in a sling. And to some degree, we were betting on the makeup that we knew he was going to, work his tail off. There had not been a quarterback have this injury. There was no really study of someone who had this injury and then later played. But it began in '06.
And the rest is history. I mean, literally, that's an overused phrase, but in this case, it really is appropriate. Let's focus first on the football piece of it. When did you start to realize that the chemistry was there? Because it's one thing to be a great coach, and you are. It's another thing to be a great quarterback, and he is. But in order to have accomplished what the two of you did, there has to be more than that. There has to just be some connection and chemistry that worked. How did you first start to realize that you had that with him?
Yeah, that's a good question. That first offseason, back then we were having 40 off-season days, of weightlifting, running. And so the off-season program started earlier. You had mini camps and OTAs. Both he and Deuce was injured from the year before. In Drew's case, he was able to go through the drills but not throw. And so he was in the huddle taking a snap. But I think right away you saw his leadership, and there were so many people that were new. We were all, it was like an upstart, a company that was just getting underway. Then we got into training camp, and he was still at that time on a very strict 20 to 30 passes a day. Pete Carmichael, who's now our offensive coordinator, Pete was with Drew in San Diego, and there was a little bit of a coincidence. I had hired Pete long before Drew was available, and Pete was the quarterback coach that season for us. So during training camp, when we were watching his progress and recovery from injury, oftentimes I'd look at Pete and say, Pete, is he close? Is that it? Pete was the only reference point to being on the field and knowing what it looked like when it was 100%. And Drew will remember this. I know Pete does. I do. We played our preseason games were all on the road that year because the Superdome was still being renovated. And we played the Colts in Jackson, I believe. And in that game, I can't recall if we won or lost the game. It was, I think, the third preseason game. And he had an interception maybe or two. I can't remember. But there were two passes he threw that were significantly different for him, the way his shoulder felt, the way, he got on top of the ball. And I remember him after the game saying, Coach, it's going to be fine. Tonight something happened, and I totally felt like it was back to the way it's supposed to feel, and that was encouraging. But he's such an optimistic person. One of the great traits when you really watch him, if you tune into a game and it just goes to the offense or him in the huddle or breaking the huddle, you would never be able to tell if we were ahead 10, down 10, ahead 20, or down 20. It's kind of the same. And but that was a night I think he would earmark as getting over the, and this was late in the preseason. And then week 1, we played at Cleveland. We won that game. He made a throw at Green Bay in week 2 where I thought, man, there it is. And that, I think the significance of his injury and the recovery, it was still getting stronger throughout the course of that 06 season. But right away, Mike, to answer your question, there's just something, and I can't put my hand on one specific thing, but he became an extension of what we were trying to do as a coaching staff. He was just such a competitor relative to how he approached everything. The way he ate, the sleeping, the working out, the training. It was just completely on another level, and you couldn't help but follow the players and coaches as well. There is this back and forth where you feel like, hey, we've got to have the best plan in place this week. And slowly that offense began to grow, and the team began to grow in that first year. He led us to the NFC Championship game. So early in that season, I think we started off 3-0, but you saw all the traits you were looking for. The only question was really the health of the shoulder, and that was answered very early in the regular season.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.